In the heart of the Tembra Highlands, nestled among rolling hills and dense forests, lay the tranquil village of Ngero. Life in Ngero was simple and harmonious. The villagers farmed their lands, fetched water from the crystal-clear river, and gathered each evening around communal fires to share stories and laughter. News in Ngero traveled swiftly. A whisper in the morning became common knowledge by nightfall. But recently, an unsettling darkness had descended upon the village. For several months, young women were found dead under mysterious circumstances. No one knew what was causing these deaths, but each victim bore the same chilling mark: 2 deep punctures on their necks, reminiscent of a spider's bite. The villagers were gripped by fear. Mothers clutched their daughters tightly, forbidding them from venturing out alone, even during daylight. The village elders convened emergency meetings, and Chief Jabari dispatched hunters into the surrounding forest to seek out any venomous creatures that might be responsible. Yet, the hunters returned empty-handed, their faces etched with frustration and dread. The deaths continued unabated, casting a long shadow over Ngero. The once vibrant marketplace grew quiet, and laughter became a rare sound. Amidst this atmosphere of terror, one man remained unfazed: Kalanji, the village blacksmith. If you asked any woman in Ngero who the most captivating man was, the unanimous answer would be Kalanji. Tall and powerfully built from years of hammering iron, his skin glistened like polished ebony under the sun. His eyes held a mischievous sparkle, and his smile could melt the coldest of hearts. Kalanji was aware of his effect on people, and he wielded his charm like a finely honed blade. While others spoke in hushed tones about the mysterious deaths, Kalanji strutted through the village with an air of indifference. He greeted everyone warmly, his laughter echoing through the narrow streets. Women found solace in his presence, forgetting their fears, if only for a moment. Kalanji had a way with words. His deep, melodious voice wrapped around listeners like a comforting blanket. He knew just when to offer a compliment or share a light-hearted joke. But behind his captivating facade lay a sinister secret. Kalanji lived on the outskirts of Ngero, in a secluded hut surrounded by towering trees. It was here that he brought his conquests, luring them with promises of handcrafted jewelry or tales of distant lands. Under the soft glow of lantern light, he made each woman feel uniquely cherished. But as night deepened, Kalanji would pose a peculiar question. Do you know the difference between a man's desire and a spider's web? The women would often giggle, dismissing it as playful banter. Before they could respond, Kalanji would produce a haunting melody, whistling a tune that seemed to make the very air vibrate. At that moment, an unsettling transformation occurred. Kalanji's demeanor shifted, his eyes darkened, and an eerie silence filled the room. From beneath his garments, a massive spider would emerge, a creature with gleaming black legs and eyes that reflected no light. The spider, a manifestation of Kalanji's cursed manhood, would crawl toward the unsuspecting woman. Paralyzed by fear, she could not scream or move. The spider struck swiftly, its fangs sinking deep into her neck. The venom acted fast, and within moments, life slipped away from her body. By dawn, the villagers would discover the woman's lifeless form, placed deliberately in the village square. Panic and sorrow rippled through Ngero, but no one ever suspected Kalanji. His alibis were airtight, his demeanor sympathetic. He attended every funeral, offering condolences and support. The villagers couldn't fathom that the charming blacksmith could harbor such darkness. One day, a new face appeared in Ngero, Amara, a woman of striking beauty and quiet strength. She had come from the distant city of Kundera to visit her aging uncle, a respected elder in the village. Amara was tall and elegant, her skin the color of deep mahogany, and her eyes held a depth that suggested she had seen more of the world than most. Unlike the other women, she didn't seek Kalanji's attention, which intrigued him greatly. Kalanji watched Amara from afar, noting the grace with which she moved and the thoughtful way she engaged with others. She was kind but reserved, warm yet distant. Her indifference to his charms was a challenge Kalanji couldn't resist. He made several attempts to engage her, offering to repair a piece of jewelry, helping carry baskets from the market, but Amara politely declined each time. Unbeknownst to Kalanji, Amara carried her own secret. Her sister, Layla, had been one of the mysterious victims in a neighboring village months before. Determined to uncover the truth behind these deaths, Amara had sought the counsel of Ebo, a wise and reclusive shaman known for his knowledge of dark curses and ancient lore. In a secluded cave, filled with the scent of burning sage and lined with cryptic symbols, Ebo revealed the horrifying reality. "There is a man," Ebo whispered, his eyes closed as if in a trance, "whose manhood is not that of a human but of a cursed spider. He uses it to ensnare and kill the unsuspecting. This man hides behind a mask of charm and beauty. To defeat him, you must be cunning. He summons the spider with a specific melody. Learn it, and you can control the creature." Ebo taught Amara the haunting tune and gave her a talisman, an intricately carved pendant shaped like a spider, but embedded with protective enchantments. "Wear this close to your heart," he instructed. "It will shield you from his venom and give you power over the spider. But be wary. He is dangerous and will stop at nothing to fulfill his dark desires." Armed with this knowledge, Amara returned to Ngero, ready to confront Kalanji. She began to subtly encourage his advances, allowing herself to appear more receptive. Kalanji noticed the change and intensified his efforts. He invited her to a moonlit dinner at his hut, and after a calculated pause, she accepted. That evening, Kalanji spared no expense. His hut was adorned with flowers, and the aroma of exotic spices filled the air. Amara arrived wearing a flowing dress that concealed the talisman beneath. As they dined, Kalanji turned on all his charm, weaving tales of distant lands and forgotten treasures. Amara listened attentively, her eyes reflecting the flickering candlelight. As the night wore on, Kalanji leaned in closer. "Amara," he whispered, "you are unlike any woman I've ever met." She smiled subtly, prompting him to continue. "Tell me," he said, his voice dropping to a seductive tone, "do you know the difference between a man's desire and a spider's web?" Amara met his gaze steadily. "Perhaps you could enlighten me," she replied softly. Kalanji's eyes flashed with a predatory gleam. He began to whistle the haunting melody, the notes weaving through the air like an invisible thread. Amara felt a chill run down her spine, but remained composed. As the spider emerged from Kalanji's form, its legs stretching out menacingly, Amara clutched the talisman and began to hum the same melody, subtly altering the tune. The spider hesitated, its movements uncertain. Kalanji looked confused, his control slipping. "What are you doing?" he demanded, his voice losing its smoothness. Amara stood, her presence commanding. "Did you think you were the only one who knew the songs of old?" she retorted. "Your reign of terror ends tonight." She intensified her humming, and the spider turned its many eyes toward Kalanji. With a shriek of rage, Kalanji tried to reassert control, but it was too late. The spider lunged at him, its fangs sinking into his neck. He screamed, a sound that echoed through the night, as the venom coursed through his veins. His body convulsed, collapsing to the floor. Amara watched solemnly as Kalanji took his final breaths. The spider dissolved into a wisp of dark smoke, its curse broken. She whispered a silent prayer for the lives lost and for the tormented soul before her. The following morning, the villagers of Ngero gathered around Kalanji's lifeless body, disbelief etched on their faces. Rumors spread quickly, and fear gave way to anger as the truth emerged. Amara stepped forward and addressed the crowd. "Kalanji was not who you believed him to be," she declared. "He was the cause of the suffering that has plagued your village. His charm hid a monstrous secret. But rest assured, his evil has been vanquished." The villagers were stunned. Many struggled to reconcile the man they admired with the horror he had perpetrated. Chief Jabari stepped forward, his voice heavy with sorrow. "We were blind to the darkness among us," he admitted. "Thank you, Amara, for revealing the truth and freeing us from this curse." In the days that followed, Ngero began to heal. The atmosphere lightened, and the sounds of laughter slowly returned. The women, in particular, felt a weight lifted from their hearts. Mothers shared Amara's story with their daughters, not as a tale of fear, but as one of courage and wisdom. They emphasized the importance of seeing beyond surface appearances and trusting one's instincts. Amara stayed in Garo for a while longer, helping the village recover. She tended to her uncle and shared her knowledge of protective charms and songs. The villagers came to respect and admire her, not just for her beauty, but for her strength and kindness. One evening, as the sun set over the hills, Chief Jabari approached Amara. "You have given us a great gift," he said. "Is there anything we can do to repay you?" Amara smiled gently. "Live in peace and be vigilant," she replied. "Evil often wears a pleasant face. Teach your children to value truth and integrity over charm and appearance." As the weeks turned into months, the story of Kalanji and Amara spread beyond Garo, reaching distant villages and towns. It became a legend, a cautionary tale about the dangers of deceit and the power of inner strength. Bards composed songs, and elders recounted the tale by the fireside. Meanwhile, Amara returned to her homeland, but remained ever watchful. She understood that while one evil had been defeated, others might lurk in the shadows. She dedicated herself to learning more about ancient curses and protective arts, traveling to remote places and studying with wise elders. Years later, whispers began to circulate about a mysterious figure helping villages plagued by unexplained tragedies. Some spoke of a guardian who appeared when needed most, wielding knowledge and courage to combat darkness. Though her name was seldom mentioned, those who had met her knew it was Amara, continuing her quest to bring light to the hidden corners of the world. The legacy of Kalanji's terror faded over time, but the lessons remained. The people of Ngero and beyond learned to look beyond superficial charm and to be cautious of those who seemed too perfect. They celebrated authenticity and encouraged open hearts paired with discerning minds. Amara's story became more than a legend. It was a beacon of hope and a guide for living with integrity and courage. And though she walked a path often fraught with danger, Amara found fulfillment in her mission, knowing that she was making a difference, one village at a time. In the end, the tale of Amara and the spider's curse served as a timeless reminder that true strength lies not in physical allure or silver-tongued words, but in the resilience of the human spirit and the unwavering pursuit of truth and justice. All right, I'll continue and expand the story as requested. The weeks passed, and Olu kept up his pursuit of Isoke, carefully concealing his growing obsession. He no longer approached her with the bold charm that had worked on the other women in the village. Instead, he played a different game, allowing her to see him less often, always keeping just out of reach. Isoke, however, remained calm, her mind sharp as she continued to play along with his delicate dance of seduction. But as the days turned into weeks, Olu's patience began to thin. His hunger for her grew with each passing moment, and his true nature started to slip out from behind his carefully crafted facade. He couldn't understand why Isoke was so resistant, why she hadn't succumbed to his charm like the others. Her quiet defiance gnawed at him, driving him to the edge of his own sanity. He knew he couldn't wait much longer. If he didn't act soon, she might slip away from him forever. One evening, under the soft glow of the moon, Olu decided that it was time to make his move. He had grown tired of the games, and the serpent inside him hungered for another victim. Isoke was walking alone from her aunt's farm, carrying a basket of yams. She looked serene, her face bathed in the silver light, her eyes reflecting the calm wisdom that had kept her from falling under his spell. Olu watched her from the shadows, his heart pounding with anticipation. As she passed by the thick bushes near the river, he emerged, his face calm, but his eyes burning with a hunger she could sense immediately. "Isoke!" he called softly. She stopped, turning to face him. For a moment, their eyes locked in silence. "Olu!" she responded, her voice as calm as ever, though there was a slight edge to it that hadn't been there before. "What are you doing out here so late?" He stepped closer, his lips curling into a smile, though there was something predatory about it now. I've been waiting for this moment. You're always so distant, but tonight you're all mine. Isoke's heart quickened, but not out of fear. She had been expecting this. Her hand tightened around the small flute that the oracle had given her, concealed within the folds of her wrapper. She said nothing, watching as Olu drew closer, his movements graceful yet calculated. I'm not like the others, Olu, she warned, her eyes narrowing slightly. You can't have me. Olu chuckled, a dark sound that echoed eerily in the quiet night. Oh, but I will. No one can resist me forever. You're no different. You've just been playing hard to get. But I've been patient, and tonight I'll show you who I really am. Isoke remained still, her heart pounding as she realized the moment she had prepared for was here. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was about to come. Then show me, she whispered, her voice steady. Without another word, Olu's expression changed. His charming mask melted away, revealing the cold, ruthless predator beneath. His eyes darkened, and he let out a low, eerie whistle, the sound slipping into the night air like a shadow. It was a sound that chilled Isoke to her core. She had heard it before, in the whispers of the women who had perished. But she was ready. As the whistle faded, a strange, unsettling silence filled the air. And then, from the shadows, it appeared, a large, sleek snake. Its scales shimmering in the moonlight, slithered out from the bushes. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural light as it moved toward Olu, wrapping itself around his body like a lover's embrace. Olu's eyes were filled with a sickening satisfaction as the snake coiled around him. This, he whispered, is my true power. Do you know the difference between a man's manhood and a snake? Isoke remained silent, her hand still resting on the flute. The snake's movements quickened, its eyes locking onto her as if it were preparing to strike. For a brief moment, fear washed over her, but she quickly remembered the oracle's words. She knew what she had to do. With a sudden, graceful motion, Isoke brought the flute to her lips and blew. The sound that came out was sharp and pure, cutting through the night like a blade. The effect was immediate. The snake froze mid-strike, its body going rigid as if it had been turned to stone. Olu's eyes widened in shock. His confidence shattered as he realized that something had gone terribly wrong. What have you done?" he hissed, his voice trembling with fury and fear. Isoke lowered the flute, her eyes cold and determined. "You're not the only one who knows how to control a snake," she said softly, her voice filled with quiet strength. "It's time you paid for what you've done." Before Olu could respond, the snake, no longer under his control, turned on him. Its movements were swift and deadly, and within seconds, its fangs had sunk deep into his neck. Olu let out a strangled cry, his body convulsing as the venom spread through his veins. His face twisted in pain, his once perfect features contorted into a grotesque mask of suffering. Isoke watched in silence as the life drained out of him, her expression unreadable. The snake, its task complete, uncoiled itself from Olu's lifeless body and slithered away into the darkness, leaving the village's most charming man lying dead at her feet. By morning, the news had spread like wildfire through the village. The people of Umaga gathered around the body of Olu, their faces filled with shock and disbelief. The man they had all admired, the one they had trusted, had been the source of the village's greatest suffering. They stared at his lifeless form, the snake bite marks on his neck, and whispered among themselves in horror. Isoke stood before them, her head held high, her face calm. She had avenged the death of her dear friend Ebony and had put an end to the terror that had haunted the village for months. But more than that, she had revealed the truth, that sometimes the most dangerous monsters are the ones who hide behind the sweetest smiles. The village chief, Chief Osei, approached Isoke, his face solemn. "You have saved us all," he said, his voice filled with gratitude. "Olu deceived us with his charm, but you saw through his lies. For that, we are forever in your debt." Isoke shook her head. "I did what had to be done. My friend Ebony deserved justice, and so did all the women who lost their lives. The villagers murmured in agreement, their admiration for Isoke growing with each passing moment. She had not only uncovered the truth, but had also faced down a monster and emerged victorious. Her bravery and wisdom would be remembered for generations to come. From that day forward, the story of Olu and his cursed snake became a cautionary tale told to the young women of Umaga. Mothers would warn their daughters to be careful of men who seemed too perfect, reminding them that not all beauty was to be trusted. The tale of Olu became a lesson, a reminder that sometimes the most dangerous things in life are the ones that seem the most harmless. As for Isoke, she was celebrated throughout the region as a hero. Her name became one of honor, spoken with reverence by the people of the F Kingdom. She had faced down a monster, outwitted a deadly serpent, and had done so with the quiet strength and wisdom that had always set her apart. And so, the village of Umaga returned to its peaceful ways. But the memory of Olu and his cursed snake lingered in the hearts of the people. They had learned a valuable lesson, that evil can hide behind the most charming of smiles, and that true strength lies not in beauty or charm, but in the courage to stand against the darkness.